Welcome to Midlife Matters. I'm Marie, and each week I'm joined by my friends Julie and Mindy to talk about all the topics keeping women in the middle years up at night. This week we're talking about camping, and also more than camping. Join us as we talk about starting new things in midlife, facing your fears, and the benefits of finding a community of women. Let's get started. Listeners, today we're talking about camping, and this is going to be one of those episodes where we replay an episode, actually from 2020, but Julie and I are going to introduce it, kind of give you some things to look forward to listening to it in case you've never heard it before, and even if you have heard it before, I went back and listened and got new things out of it. So it's more than just about camping. It's about fears, it's about facing your fears, it's about doing things that are new in midlife. But the woman that's talking, her name is Janine Pettit, and she runs Girl Camper, and she has a blog, a podcast, a Facebook group that Julie just told me has grown to about 450,000. And when we interviewed her, it only had 24,000. So obviously women are interested in this subject, and she is passionate about equipping women to go places and do things. And she teaches women how to tow and camp safely. She holds a lot of events around the country, but also just listening to her, I was inspired that even if camping is not your thing, she is inspiring to listen to because anything new that you want to try, you could get something out of this episode. What did you think when you re-listened, Julie?
Yeah, I wanted to say that I've yet to buy a camper or go, do any of this, but so don't turn this episode off if you just say I'm never going to camp, because it really can apply to anything in midlife. Finding something that kind of helps you get over the hump, over the transition. And she's just very, very encouraging and inspiring on, facing your fears. I loved one of the things she said was, when women first think about doing this, they fear towing a camper. Like, how dangerous is that? What if I broke down? What if I had a flat tire? And I was just kind of surprised at her answer. She said, every one of those fears is going to happen to you at some point. But then she said, but you're going to live to tell it. And that was just really encouraging to me, because isn't that true about a lot of things in life? We have these fears, they really happen, and then you live to tell about it.
That's so true. I definitely, noticed that in there. I noticed the emphasis that she put on the community of women helping women. I mean, if you run into trouble out there, she said that you can post on their Facebook site and there'll be women that live pretty much anywhere that you're broken down, and they'll say, hey, I'm 30 minutes from you. I'm on my way. And even amongst the camping events, these women out there, like some of them have gone through really hard things, and now camping is kind of their thing to maybe get through that. And all the other women are so encouraging, and it's just sounds like a really great community.
Yeah, and that is true of the camping community in general. She said she's really never been afraid in a campground because she does camp alone a lot. And I know I have camped once since this episode with a friend, and we had a little issue, and we asked for help, and people were more than ready to help. They weren't axe murderers.
Right.
They were like, sure, we'll do that. We'll help you do that. So you have to learn how to do that, to trust and be willing to ask for help. And so that's a good thing. And, when I started to re-listen to this, it just kind of started in the middle of the podcast, and it was a little bit surreal because the part that I listened to first was where she said that she's so proud of the way that this girl camper community circles around widows. Well, this episode came out
in
2 or 3 months,
I think, of 2020.
Yeah, 2 months before John's diagnosis. And when she was talking about how, it circles around widows and really supports them, I responded next saying, I really think I could see myself doing this. That was just a little weird to hear myself saying that. Like, never in a million years did I think that I might be doing this as a widow. And she said that widowhood sneaks up on people, that people had all these plans of doing this with their husband, and they either have to decide it's over, I can't do it, or I can do it by myself, or with a group, a community, and I don't know if I'll end up doing that or not, but it was just encouraging to do whatever I think I can't do. Like this weekend, I traveled to see a friend and I flew by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds like such a baby thing. Like I consider myself a pretty seasoned world traveler.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a little, I don't know, it was a little nerve-wracking to face flying there by myself. And I had just gone to a wedding the weekend before and I drove. And
Mm-hmm.
it's been a little exhausting. Like normally I'm just sitting in the passenger seat for the ride.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's all on me. And it's been stressful. But I'm hoping that just the more I face those things in baby steps, in small ways, that I'll get over that fear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I couldn't help but thinking of you during that and thinking how surreal it was that it was just a couple months. And when she did say that widowhood sneaks up on you. And I think that you are out there facing your fears, one fear at a time. Even this week, listeners, Julie's having to decide whether or not her roof has hail damage. Normally, your husband would take care of something like that.
Yeah.
It would not be on you. I mean, you might be a part of it, but you're not deciding who to call. You're not deciding who's trustworthy. You're not deciding whether, she's got two conflicting opinions now. Well, now what does she do? Like every day there's some new thing that you're having to face that you did not have to face a few short years ago.
Yeah, it really does feel like the weight of the world, and it's not even big things. It's just a lot of little things,
Mm-hmm.
Being piled on.
Right. No, yeah, that's so true. One of the things that I sort of felt during this episode was she said that people can be at home raising families and doing the same thing for 30 years, and then they decide to go camping. She said that she thinks it seems like they need to spend the next 5 years on the road to process the last 30 years. And I hesitate to say that to people because I think they will think, oh, that's so weird. But I kind of feel like I'm going through retirement. And so I feel like someone would understand someone needing to process retirement. Like when my dad retired, it probably took him 5 years to actually get comfortable being retired. Mm-hmm. And nobody thinks that about men. They don't think like, well, why is it taking them a long time to settle into retirement? But like, I just had another kid be launched into adulthood this weekend, and yay. I mean, I'm cheering for him. I'm cheering for us. I'm super proud of him, but it is a different transition. This kid is not going to be coming home on college breaks anymore. Like this kid is going to pay for his own bills. This kid is going to make his own decisions. And so it's another kid that's out there, and it is a mental transition for me. And so I don't know, I kind of feel like I'm like retiring a little bit more each year from what I've always done. And it takes time to process. And you don't always process things linearly. It's like you might process it a little bit and then not think about it. And then another thing comes up and you have to process it a little bit more. And that's why it takes time. And that's why she was saying in the camping that like one of the nice things is the women can just go out there and do whatever they want. If they want to hike, fine. If they want to stay in their camper and watch a movie all afternoon, they don't have to answer to anybody. Like sometimes your mind just needs time to process the changes that have been happening in your life.
Yeah, we had this exact conversation. I went to visit a friend this weekend, and we were kind of commiserating, like we feel like we don't get anything done. Mm-hmm. And I thought, why? I mean, my schedule's wide open, and at the end of the day, I think, what did I do? And we both kind of agreed that a lot is going on in our head. I am always processing what happened to me. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Every little thing, and it's exhausting. And so I can see how that would take some time. I mean, when you've, like a man in retirement who's ended what he's done for the last 30, 40 years, that is a lot to think about. And it's a major life shift. And so, yeah, I did appreciate what she said about when women go camping, that you're spending time with other women, and it's not around a goal that's related to their family. Like normally when you're spending time with women, it's about carpools and PTA and sporting events, but it's not like that when they're out together, And I got to experience a little bit of this when I went on that huge out west road trip with my friend. That was the most freeing, fun thing I've ever done. And I've been to Europe several times. Like those were fun things too, and traveling with my husband. But there was just something unique about that time because it was just like whatever we wanted to do.
Yeah, you didn't have any schedule for each day. You kind of drove as far as you wanted to drive. You stopped and saw what you wanted to see.
And you weren't trying to please a bunch of other people.
Yes. Yes. You
Like,
ate what you wanted
okay,
to eat and
yeah,
you stopped when you wanted to stop.
yeah. If I wanted to eat my almonds for lunch, that was okay.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Now, I was thinking that since we recorded this episode, I don't think I had really even been to any national parks or thought about camping. But in the years since, I've been meeting my brother every summer. And so one summer since then, we met at Glacier, and Steve and I and the two girls, we actually stayed in a hotel and then would drive into the park and meet him. Now, the next year after that, we went to Yosemite and I did glorified camping where it's like a wooden floor, canvas walls, and they set it up for you. And now this year, 3 years in, I'm doing tent camping. I am physically bringing my tent. We will be setting it up. So like even listening to that episode, I thought, wow, I've really come a long way
You have.
in the camping department. Now I haven't actually slept in my tent yet, but I mean, it's going to be soon.
Yeah, it's coming up, Marie.
So I'll have to see if I'm feeling the camaraderie. But even last year, we would go and like spend the evenings in the campground with my brother. And it is such a wonderful community. I enjoyed strolling around the little circle and talking to the different people about why they chose what like RV they have or little camper truck that they have or why they have that equipment. That in itself is very interesting to me.
Yeah, because Janet, my friend Janet, her camper was so adorable. It was a vintage camper, and she said she couldn't go anywhere because she got delayed at every gas station because people flocked over to ask her those kind of questions. So and anytime you're involved in a sport or a hobby, the equipment is always the most fun part for me.
Yes, it's very interesting to see why people choose what they choose and how they make it work. And everybody has a little different setup. It's so creative.
Yeah.
I just love that part of listening to those stories.
You can go, you can join Girl Camper's Facebook page, but because they like to keep things safe for women, you can go to girlcamper.com and see a whole list of events because now they have like little, I guess, subgroups all over the country. So you could find a group that's near you, if you're going to be camping near you or you're going to go to another state, you could find a group of girl campers to meet up with there. And you have to pay a $10 safety vetting fee. And then once you're in, you get to see all these events. So I appreciate that they try to keep it safe. Yeah. And next June, there's going to be a big girl camper event in Colorado. And I'm thinking of going with my friend. And she said a lot of times there's a lodge nearby or there's cabins or you don't have to have a camper or sleep in a tent, but you get to be with all these women and they have all these fun events planned and it's in Colorado with great
is
weather.
Beautiful all everywhere you look.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. So there are other ways to get together with them if you don't own things, like own campers and tents and stuff.
All right, listeners, we think that you're really going to enjoy this episode. We hope that you'll continue to listen. Like we said, there's way more that you're going to get out of it than just camping. So let us know what you think. Janine, you have quite the resume there, and I know that you mostly started this in midlife, and so that's why I am so looking forward to talking with you today.
Well, thank you, Marie. Yeah, this is my post-mom job.
And I bet you never started out to do that, but will you share with listeners how you did get started camping and how it became such a passion?
Well, I was one of those cookie bakers. I was a full-time cookie baker, but, I had always some side gig going. I was always hustling something. And, and you build up quite the skill set as a full-time mom because, I was a substitute teacher and I had a real estate license for a while. And then when the kids were getting toward the end, I could see the light at the end of the tunnel, I found out that there was such a thing as girl camping. And I grew up in a camping family. Some of the best memories I have were just camping. My dad was a banjo picker, a guitar player, and we'd all be sitting around the fire. And I just never forgot that. But I married a non-camper. And I took him camping with me once and he came home and he said, thank God that is over. And I was thinking we were going to buy an RV next weekend and he's like, done. We did it.
Cross it off.
Yeah. So I found out that there's such a thing as girl camping and that there were these women traveling around the country with little campers, going places and doing things. And I showed this to my husband and he said, "Oh my gosh, you got to join these people right now. You found your people. These are your people."
Awesome.
And I said, "That's crazy. Like we had kids in college, but we had just adopted one of our foster children who was in second grade."
Mm.
And I was like, "I've got a 7-year-old. You don't leave 7-year-olds." And my husband looked at me really seriously and he said, "I'm going to tell you something. In 2 years, all of your friends are done. Their youngest is off to college and you're going to be at the 5th grade science fair and you're going to hit the wall." And he said, "You really need to have something for round 2 here to just look forward to." And I was like, "Who is this guy?" And I was like, "No, this is a dream come true. I'm so excited. She's finally ours, and that's not going to happen." Fast forward 3 years. I'm like, "What? We don't have a babysitter. Everyone's going out to eat, and we couldn't go with our friends because we didn't have a babysitter, and our other kids were out of the house." And so I bought a little camper, and it gave me really something to look forward to in those last years getting over, it was the extended parenting program. I was at my youngest daughter's senior year in high school. I was at back to school night and I sat there and I went, "Oh, let me do the math here. This is my 27th year in a row of back to school nights."
Oh, wow.
So being able to get outdoors again, feeling like a little independent, feeling like having that girlfriend time out of your mom and wife role, because a lot of the time we spend with women, it's at school, at a PTA, at a sporting event. This was women just be out there by themselves without a goal that was related to their family. And that was just crazy time to me at the time,
Right.
but it really, it got me over the hump.
That sounds really refreshing to have that kind of time where you're not focused on the things that fill your mind 24/7 with your family.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what inspired you to start this community of girl campers? So you became a part of girl camping, but what prompted you to start this official?
Well, because I grew up in a camping family and I'm one of 7 children and I'm number 3 in the pecking order. And to say we were not coddled is an understatement. Like it was all hands on deck and sink or swim in my family in the best possible way. It was a happy chaos, but I was 17 years old towing our family camper with 9 people in a family station wagon. That's the kind of confidence my dad had.
Wow.
Like he was, "Janine, it's your turn to drive. Get up here."
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would never let my 17-year-old even drive her brother to soccer, like across town. And here I was in the family wagon pulling a pop-up with a tent on top and cooler strapped to the hood and with 9 souls in the car. So but my dad was like, "Okay, this is how it's done." In our family, it was not, "Can I do this?" This is how it's done. So when I got out there and I saw women pull up to the campground with these little tiny tow vehicles and big campers that they just bought off eBay, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, do you know those chains are not strong enough? And do you know that this is not the right hitch? And this doesn't look safe to me."
Right.
And then I'm like, these people get inspired. Like you see the groups online. This is so inspiring. Oh my gosh, this looks like so much fun, right? But you need the right tools and you need to do it smartly and safely. So I'm like, started writing a little blog like, this is what you need to know about your tow vehicle, your gross vehicle weight, your chains, your safety. And that kind of just, when you do something you love, it just kind of snowballs. And then Go RVing, which is the marketing arm of the RV industry, kind of spotted me somewhere and said, "Who's this crazy camping lady? And would you write a blog for us?" That really legitimized me in a way that I probably shouldn't have been at the time, but it made me up my game,
Right. That is, oh my gosh, this is completely fascinating. I would love for you to go ahead and tell us what type of woman makes up the community of Girl Camper?
That is the coolest thing because our community is so diverse. I would say a lot of it is kind of empty nesting and midlife moms, the bulk of it. But within that group, we've got everybody. We've got single, divorce. We've got women who are married to couch potatoes. We've got straight and gay and, hikers and non-hikers and knitters and like people like you'll get out at the campground and there'll be a group of women doing crafts at a table. And then there's another group of women who are going to climb the 14er,
oh, wow.
It's just like diehard athletes and somebody bring me my ice cream soda, so
love it.
People say to me all the time, what do you do when you go camping? I said, whatever the hell you want. Because we have been serving in the happiest of ways, of course, for all of these years. And when you get to the campground and you think, if I wanted to, I could lay in bed and watch a movie on a Saturday afternoon. Like, that's not even a crazy option for most women. Like, if you're at home at your house, even if nobody was there and you had nothing pressing, there was nothing in most women that would think, I'm going to watch a movie. They would think, well, let me get a jump on the Christmas list. Let me clean out that closet, And I remember when I first joined, I drove all the way to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, which is like 14 hours from my house for a single weekend, to be there for 2 nights. I didn't think that was weird. And we went horseback riding in the mountains in the morning, and it was a gorgeous, crisp fall day. And I kept pinching myself like, I cannot believe I'm on a horse in the Smoky Mountains, and this is so much fun. And I came back, and all the girls were running off to Dollywood. And I laid down on my bed, and I popped White Christmas into my VCR. Aww. This was so long ago. It was a
VCR,
right? And my TV with the built-in VCR. And I made myself a hot cocoa, and I was all snuggled in under my down blankets. And my husband called me and he said, what are you doing? And I said, you're not going to believe what I'm doing. I am watching a movie under my down blanket, drinking hot cocoa in my little house on wheels. And he said, shut off the phone so nobody calls you and just sink into it,
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah. And so, I mean, so we've got women like, you just get to do whatever you want, and you don't have to be something for someone.
Well, that's so impressive to hear. What would you say? I've recently read your blog, and I would love for you to share just kind of the common denominator that pulls this community together, the diverse group of women, all different walks of life, like you mentioned, just coming around the circle together. Could you just kind of talk about the things that bring us together, especially when it feels like there's so many things that can divide us right now?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that because, as kind of the admin of and the founder of the brand of Girl Camper, you inadvertently fall into a leadership role that you didn't sign up for, and you want to be sensitive to everybody. But then again, you also don't want to police people, So what happened with me is I thought, we have all these different people, and we've done this thing in our society now where everybody is expected to understand what your Achilles heel is. So, okay, I've been wounded in this way. I'm an adult child of an alcoholic. I had a mentally ill mother. I was abandoned by my husband. Everybody's got something. It's a wounded world out there. And honestly, that's why we go camping. But we've developed this thing in our country now where we're expected, and it's perpetuated in the media, we're expected to understand everybody's wound, the appropriate language to speak to that person, respond to them in that language. And then if we don't, we're something, we're this, and this. And I thought, no, I can't do that at Girl Camper. So I looked at it and I said, our common denominator is that we're all women. And when I think about the role of women, we wear a lot of hats as women. We have many more things that unite us than divide us. So we're sitting around that campfire. And even if you're not a mother yourself, you're an aunt, you're a sister, you are maternal. Women are maternal. So we all have that common denominator of being caretakers, being educators, being people who want to help. And so we work, we have aging parents we're taking care of. We have kids that maybe didn't launch the way we wanted them to. We're still worried about them. So I was like, this is where we're together, right? And when you sit around that campfire and you hear those women tell their stories, then you understand, I'm not in a place to judge her response. Like, I can't look at this woman and say, why is she doing that? That's not my job as a woman in our circle. So our job as the women around the campfire is to say, I'm so sorry that happened to you. I think you're doing a great job with those kids, considering you have to do it all by yourself. And man, you look amazing for someone who works 60 hours a week. Like, we need to be upholding women and uplifting women and getting rid of this idea that it's our jobs to tell them where their thinking is not right. You're this-ism, that-ism, that-ism. Like, it's not our job. So I think as a community, I try to create an environment in which, rather than telling people where they're falling short, because we all have enough people in our lives doing that for us, we want to be a community in which we're lifting women up and saying, you know what, I don't care if you voted like me, I don't care if you dress like me, I don't care if you hike and I sew. You're just a woman in my circle, and I want to honor the fact that you're just a fellow human being trying to tread this life, with all the things you have going on, just like I am. So to stop having expectations of other people to fill your holes. Maybe you want to be a hole filler instead.
That's great.
That's awesome. After reading some of your posts on your Facebook group, I was really surprised by how many women seem to enjoy camping alone. That really surprised me. Why do you think that is?
I got to tell you, Julie, that surprises me too. I mean, I camp often and I have done solo trips, but usually I'm doing a solo trip on my way to a trip. So I may drive from New Jersey to Texas and camp for 3 nights by myself along the way. But when I get there, I found my people and we're all together. There is a large percentage of women, and the solo woman traveler is the fastest growing segment in the RV industry. It's really interesting. There's 1 million full-time RVers out there, people who don't own a stick and brick house. 1 million RVers who live in an RV full-time.
Wow.
So if you take the single people in that category, the largest percentage of those are women. Lots are married couples. But when you separate out the single people, it's like 70% are women and only like 30% are men. I laugh about it. I think it's because if you're a woman, you know that you probably have to lock yourself in the bathroom to get 5 minutes by yourself. So I think women get a camper and they go, okay, I'm out of here and no one is going to find me.
They put their bathroom on wheels.
I honestly think it's like if you've raised a family and spent 30 years in your home and taking care of people and you find yourself with your kids gone and single and able to travel, I think you're going to need to spend 5 years on the road just to process the last 30 years.
That's a good point.
Right. Yeah, I read one woman.
I think they're calming down. I think
I read one woman, she said she drove to Alaska the summer after her husband died.
Yeah.
And I think she spent 2 months on the road. And one woman said, I've been on the road 6 months and don't know when I'm coming back. And other women said they called their camper their escape pod and even camped in their own driveway when the family got to be too much.
Really?
Well, I would love to speak to you for a minute about the widow. So of all the women in Girl Camper, I think the widows have the most to gain from being part of our community. And the reason I say that is because for so many people, widowhood snuck up on them. I mean, I've read many stories. I've been doing this 15 years, and I've read many stories of women who were like, my husband and I had all these plans. This is what we were going to do. And then he got cancer, and 3 months later, he was gone. I remember one woman, I met her at an RV show, and I was speaking at the show, and she came up to me and she said, I'm just spiraling. I don't know what I'm going to do. My husband died of a heart attack 3 weeks ago, and he was, I don't know, 63 or 64. And she said, we just retired. We didn't get to do all of the things we were planning on all these years. And she said, we were going to buy an RV and they were looking at big things. So I just walked around with her and I said, really just saying to her, there's people out there who will help you. And this is not the end of life. Let's try to think that this is a transition that you didn't want. And so helping women ease into, that stage of life. And, statistically, it's going to happen to more of us than it's going to happen to men. Well, so I spoke to her and I said, let's look at little trailers. Let's look at something you can handle on your own. And I showed her some things and we just talked, and I took her card and I called her once or twice. And then I kind of lost track of her. I was camping in Pennsylvania like 3 years ago, and I'm walking up to the camp store and I saw her in the little trailer.
Oh.
And I'm like, Patty, oh my gosh, do you remember me? And she said, remember you? You changed my life. And not me personally, but, this community. And she had the little trailer that she bought. And she said, I've joined a women's fishing group. She had stickers all over the back of her camper of all the places she had been. And so I love that this group gives hope to widows, because you had this plan to do this with your spouse, and that's not possible now. So you find people like, it's not what I wanted, but I can be happy again. I'm not going to sit here crying until, I join him again on the other side. And, that's a really tough row to hoe. And so I'm proud of the way our community kind of circles around the widows and just like, we'll be your people.
That's so neat. That's so inspiring. I can actually see myself doing that.
I could see you doing that too, Julie.
Me too.
I never really had thought about it, but I think I could do that.
Yeah.
Well, you know what's funny, Julie? I find after 15 years of camping with all these women that they kind of fall into two categories. You'll sit around the campfire, and women who are married, the women who are widowed will often say, oh, I miss my husband so much, and I'm having fun with my friends, but it's sad sometimes and it's lonely sometimes. And so many of the married women are like, boy, if my husband goes, I'm never doing this again. I am hitching up and taking off with my girlfriends. And, like it's an interesting perspective, and I read an article someone wrote about the sadness when their father was widowed, and 6 months later he got remarried, and they were all still reeling like mom isn't here. And the dad comes home with a wife. And they're like, Dad, what are you doing? And he's like, your mother made marriage so appealing to me that I could he loved the state of married life. And when the kids thought, yeah, that's what mom gave you, that safety and security, naturally you want it again. So the people fall into two categories. I think if you're married to someone who's really your partner in life, you're gonna maybe feel that way. But if you have been in a marriage in which it's always been kind of an uphill battle, then you're like, give me those widows. Let's take off, ladies. We're gonna
Well, I'm just thinking that if, someone is starting out on their own, I feel as a woman, there would be a lot of big obstacles or fears to get out there on my own. Am I going to be safe? Can I actually pull this trailer? Am I going to get in an accident? What if I get a flat tire? What if I can't set things up when I get to the campsite? What do you tell women about those fears, or how do you help them work through them?
I'm going to tell them that every one of those fears is going to happen to you at some point.
Okay.
I rip that Band-Aid off.
Yeah, sorry, ladies. And you're going to live to tell. And what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So unless you're attacked by a bear, it's all going to be good. Towing is the number one fear, and it's a skill set. So at one time you didn't know how to ride a bike and you didn't know how to swim, and there's all kinds of things we didn't know how to do. And I always tell people that innately towing is not dangerous. If it was, U-Haul would never let everybody who comes in the door with a valid driver's license drive away with it. Statistically, they would not let you do that, so you got to remind yourself that people are out there every day doing it, and you just have to learn those techniques. I had a real fear of, what if I ever break down someplace in the middle of nowhere? Because I'm often traveling where there's no Wi-Fi, with no cell signal. And I'm like, oh, what if well, it happened. I was in Custer State Park in South Dakota, and I was driving to Cody, Wyoming, and my check engine light kept coming on. And I was like, the sign on the highway was like 47 miles to the next exit. Well, you have no idea what an exit in the middle of Wyoming looks like. It's nothing. It's a gas station if you're lucky. Like it's nothing. And so it went on, and I had to pull over, and I was like, I have this weak signal, so I had to make a choice right now. Do I turn around and go back towards Sturgis, which is 80 miles back from where I just came from? So at least if I'm going to be broken down, you have to, like sharpen your senses and go, what would you want your kids to do? Like, if your daughter called you and said, Mom, you'd say, turn around and get back in the right direction, right? So that's what I did. And my wastegate valve on my truck was broken, and I had to spend 2 days in some Ford dealership in Sturgis, and I was missing all the fun, and it got fixed, and I went on my way. So stuff is going to happen, but really, like the way we're connected these days, it's really, in all the years that I have been camping, I have never been at a campground where I felt unsafe. And now that being said, I am not one of these women who boondocks in a Walmart parking lot by myself. My husband has some rules for me, and I'm happy to accommodate him, because while I'm out having fun with my friends, he's paying the bills and feeding the dog. So, I feel like it's the least I could give back to him. And one of his rules is, unless when you're traveling alone, unless you're in a private campground that's gated, you just stay at a hotel. And I accommodate him, so I'm not one of these people who finds some remote area and parks there. I wouldn't get a wink of sleep. So,
sure.
Right. But I know women who, boondock and really remote places by themselves. And a lot of the women who are solo travelers, they're packing, and I was down in Texas with about 100 girls and we were camping in a field in the middle of nowhere. And my husband says, do you feel safe? And I said, I feel sorry for anyone who would approach any one of these Texas girls, because, like every one of them has got a concealed carry, and no one has ever used it.
Okay.
It's just kind of peace of mind,
right.
But so things are going to happen, but that's what we do at Girl Camper. We teach women, like, here's an app that can help you find a gas station. Here's an app that can help you. Here's insurance companies that will tow your truck and your trailer, because that happened to me once. My truck broke down, and my insurance covered the truck, but they wanted me to leave my camper on the side of the road. And so I had to get a different truck to come out and carry the camper away. And we've had women run into situations on the road, and you know what they do? They go to our Facebook group and say, I'm in East Jabip, someplace, and this is what's happening. And 6 girls will jump on and say, I'm 30 miles away. I'll be right over.
Oh, that's neat.
Oh, yeah. It happens frequently. Oh, I got a flat. The guy won't come. He's telling me 6 hours. My husband and I are on our way. We'll help you.
Oh,
so that's what's so cool about our community. So, I think it's so important in midlife at all times, but especially in midlife. I feel like we come to this crossroad and we have to make a decision about how we're spending those later years. So you could really become embroiled in fear and never do anything on your bucket list. If you play every scenario and what if in your head, you're going to be paralyzed and you're not going to go. So I think it's so important to always kind of challenge yourself and push yourself a little beyond your comfort zone. I think it's emotionally and mentally and physically healthy for us to do that.
I know we tow a boat a lot of places, not a camper yet, but a boat. And I'm fine if I'm going forward. But when he asks me to go backward, that's when it all falls apart.
Backing up it's so funny. So the number one fear, if I poll women, the number one fear is towing. They're afraid to tow. That's more easily addressed than the fear of backing up. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of like in high school, I was on the golf team and I was the only girl on the golf team. And I used to hate it when the coach would make me tee off first. You had 20 high school boys watching you. It was always a disaster, and you feel like that way when you get to the campground. You're pulling up. And everybody wants to come out and watch you back in. And it's so nerve-wracking, And I just tell people, there's no way around that backing up except experience. Mm-hmm. I camped in my first camper. I camped for 2 years. I had a 1959 Field and Stream. It was like 12 feet long. I bought it on eBay for $2,500 sight unseen.
Oh, wow.
But I had it for 8 years and it was a dream. But for 2 years, I paid probably double what I had to so I could camp and drive through spots.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
Because I didn't need that anxiety, right? So here's all the girls on the other side of the campground in their little circle, and there was me with all the big Class A's right in the middle.
That's funny.
But you know what? I could take that off my list. And then one day I said, okay, you know what? Everybody's doing this. I've just got to at least try. And it took me a long time. Now, the funny thing is, it becomes a muscle memory. It's completely rote to me. We came home from a trip about a month ago, and our next door neighbors have twin sons who were having a high school graduation party, and all those boys were out in front playing basketball. And here comes Mrs. Pettit, right, in her camper. And the boys had to get out of the street. In 2 moves, I cracked the truck one way, spun it around, backed it into the driveway, and 1 move, jumped out of the truck, and all those high school boys were clapping.
Oh, that's cool.
Impressive.
That is very impressive.
Yeah. You will get there. You will get there.
Just takes
and the
practice.
more you do it, the better you'll get at it.
Well, Janine, how can listeners find women in their area to connect with, to go camping with, or maybe like they want to go to a certain part of the country? How can they connect up with women who are already there?
Well, I'm so glad you asked that, Julie. Just this year, we started Girl Camper chapter guides. So we inspire women, right? But then it's like, we want to have women to camp with. How are we going to put these groups together to camp with? So we started Girl Camper chapter guides. We have 12 of them now, and we have 140 applications of people who want to be Girl Camper chapter guides. And they'll take a certain part of the country and they will become the little tourism and camping expert for their part of the country and create trips to go there. So if you go over to girlcamper.com and you click on chapters, you'll see if there's a chapter next to, near you. But if there isn't, they're coming soon.
Okay.
Oh my goodness. Well, I've heard mention earlier of a new magazine. And so I would love for you to tell us about your magazine. The first edition, I guess, just came out. I saw the cover. It looks amazing.
We love the cover. And it wasn't anything like we had in mind. I kept sending our art director all these pictures of cute little trailers. And then she sent us this little still life that just sang Girl Camper. We all looked at it and went, oh, that makes my heart happy,
Mm-hmm.
So basically this was what I did over my COVID vacation. So all my travel was canceled, starting March 1st. And I'm usually gone like every other weekend at an RV show or something. And I had the magazine in my head because I love magazines. I love print magazines. Cottage Journal, Country Living, Cottage Home. Like I'm such a visual person and I save them all. I said to my girlfriend, I think I'm going to put together a magazine. And 8 weeks later, it was done.
Wow.
And because it was already existed in my head. Somebody actually submitted us for an Ozzy award, which I didn't even know what an Ozzy was, but it's the kind of Oscars of the publishing world. And we won an honorable mention for design. And so it's like a 90-page magazine, and I swear it's not all ads. We really limit the ads. There's a ton of features in there. It's printed on very heavy 100-pound stock paper on the front because we want everybody to save it. And the interior pages are 70-pound paper, and it's articles on towing, like what I need to know, what's the right equipment, and what kind of battery should I have? But then here's our favorite campgrounds and stories about women who had this dream and overcame the obstacles and made it happen. And there's health and wellness and campgrounds and tow vehicles. And one of our favorite features is Factory to Fabulous, where we feature someone's camper because, a woman gets her hands on that. And my husband says to me all the time, you could turn a cardboard box into a home, honey. And people do that with their campers. They get it and it's their space and, it's so full of things they love and they take that factory and they make it fabulous. So we love our little Factory to Fabulous. And so The magazine, we just published our second issue, the fall issue of Girl Camper magazine. And I have so many people who have written to me that say, I don't camp, but I bought your magazine because I like your podcast. And she said, I don't camp and I don't think I'll ever camp, but I loved reading the stories about women. It was so affirming to read these stories about women who, are making things happen. And there's something in it for everybody, even if you're not a camper.
Yeah, Janine, I did see the hard copy of that magazine at Janet's house, and it was beautiful. And the little camper that's on the cover, I got to camp in that several times, and I actually helped the former owner drive it from Seattle back to her home in Arkansas. And then I've camped at Disney World in that camper, and it's adorable.
It's so adorable. So that's our factory, not our Factory of Fabulous, but every year we do an annual Girl Camper charity raffle. And we raffle off a trailer. And the recipient of our raffle is the Hold You Foundation. That's the official charity of Girl Camper. And it's an organization that helps parents with children in critical health crisis cover their expenses. So a lot of charities will help you pay an uncovered medical bill. That's not what Hold You is. Hold You will give you quick emergency money when you don't have money for gas. Like when your electric's going to be turned off, when 70% of parents with a child in a health crisis will fall under the poverty line. So while you're taking off work to take care of your child, things are falling apart. So the mission of Hold You is that we hold you so you can hold your child. And we just love this foundation. So this is our third year. And that little trailer you're talking about, Julie, looks vintage, but it's a 2016 relic trailer, woman-owned business. A woman started this manufacturing firm building these little relic trailers in 2015. And we bought that from one of our girl campers who just had a change in life plans, and she upgraded to something a little larger. And we thought it was just darling, and it's on the cover. And you can buy a raffle ticket for it at girlcamper.com. They're only $10. And
I bought mine.
You did? Well, campers have raised $100,000 for Hold You Foundation in the last 2 years. So that's a lot of tanks of gas and bags of groceries for families in crisis. So we're really proud of that.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, Janine, what would you say to somebody who has listened today and they've thought, man, I've never even thought about camping in campers by myself, but it sounds so cool. How would I even get started or think about making this a reality?
Well, I would think that you would just, first of all, join our Facebook page, because that's such a great community and it's a great place to ask questions. It's built-in crowdsourcing. So people get on there all the time. And it's interesting to me because a great deal of our followers are actually wannabes. They're not people who camp. They're looking, they're watching. They're like, how can I get in on this? So I would start by joining our Facebook group, but then also listen to the Girl Camper podcast, because we've done 220 episodes covering everything from, what is a girl camper to how do I know if my tow vehicle can tow this camper? And then also subscribe to the magazine, and you'll feel so much inspiration from that. But our community will help you get there.
Yeah. What's your most inspiring girl camper story that you've heard from your followers?
There's so many over the years, but one that always sticks to me and I'll never forget, it's kind of old now. And it was a husband who listened to my podcast, and he wrote me a letter and he said, I listened to your podcast and I wonder if I could co-opt you to help me help my wife. And he said one of our children had, just something catastrophic happen to her. And it's been so devastating to my wife. And he said, our daughter has gotten a lot of help in therapy and moved on, and she's doing very well, but my wife is not. And kind of in our family crisis, she lost a lot of her girlfriends and isolated. And he said, I listened to your podcast. I think my wife needs a camper.
Oh, wow.
And so he went out and he bought her a little tiny teardrop trailer and a tow vehicle. And on weekends, they would go camping together, but he would always drive and hitch everything. And he's like, I really need you to help her understand that she's able to do this. So I called her up and we set a goal that she would take that camper to West Virginia from Ohio, where we were all going to meet. And her husband is such a great guy. And he's just a super husband. We gave him a t-shirt that said super husband. And so just so he could give her the confidence, he rode shotgun with her all the way to the campground the weekend before, so she could see every road and everything.
Oh, wow.
And and then the next weekend she had to do it by herself. And it was like she finished the Los Angeles Marathon or something when she got there. She was like, I did it. But it wasn't just that she towed. It's that it was the first step of her coming out of that dark place she had been in. And if you want to fast forward 5 years, that little teardrop lasted about 1.5 years. And then she and her husband got an Airstream. He's a pilot and he'll be gone for 10 days at a time. He flies internationally for a private company. So they'll be somewhere in Arizona and she'll drive him to the airport and he'll be gone for 10 days. And she's driving all over and camping by herself in that big Airstream with her dogs. And
wow.
I love looking at that journey, which really started with an incredible deep love her husband had for her. It's really even hard for me I always get choked up when I get to this part because, I mean, she really had someone in her corner to get her started. But once she got there, she's such a deep part of this community now. And it was really life-changing for her. And I think for a lot of women, once you accomplish this, it's a question in your heart. Like, you gain so much confidence. There is the next thing, like, what am I going to do now? Now that I know what I'm made of, am I going to write that book? Am I going to hike the Appalachian Trail? What am I going to do? It just opens your life to so many other things.
That is such a cool story. I love it.
She might not have found that without her husband stepping in. That's so neat.
That he was so concerned about her, and he traveled a lot. And he said, I hate it when I'm gone because I know she's, when I'm home, I get her out of the house. But when I'm gone for 6 or 7 days at a time, it just kills me to think of her just at home, So she's not at home anymore, man. She is having a ball.
That's awesome. Well, that is so inspiring. And I'm sure many of our listeners are inspiring by hearing that story and all the things you've shared today, Janine. If listeners want to come and find you, you said that they should go to your Facebook and your website. Do you want to give those for listeners one more time? And also your podcast.
Well, the podcast is simple. It's just the Girl Camper Podcast. You can find me on Instagram, which is Fun Inspiration under girl_camper. And just head over to our website, which is girlcamper.com. And you can read all of the information that our Girl Camper chapter guides all have their own little microsite within the Girl Camper website. And you'll just find tons of stuff. You'll fall down a rabbit hole and waste half a day.
I was going to say, it sounds like there's a lot of information that we could have fun sorting through.
Yeah.
There's a lot there.
And don't feel guilty about it.
No. We'll just remember your story about watching White Christmas with the hot cocoa.
I know.
Yeah.
That's what I was just thinking.
It's interesting because one of the things when I'm working with women is helping them give themselves permission to have some fun.
Yeah.
So once they get past it, you wouldn't believe how they get over it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We hope some listeners will be inspired to come and find you. Listeners, let us know if you already are a member of Girl Camper or if you've been considering camping on your own. Find us on Instagram at Midlife Matters Podcast or send us an email at midlifematterspodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Janine, thanks so much for joining us again. We loved getting to talk with you.
Oh, thank you, all of you. This has been so much fun for me. And thank you for sharing the love about Girl Camper. Maybe there's a few campers out there and we can get them going.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure there are.
Can I just add, Marie, that I should have said this. You don't have to have an RV to be a Girl Camper. We host our events. And we always choose a campground with rental cabins. You can rent an RV from outdoorsy.com. They'll deliver it right to the campground for you. So there's all kinds of ways for you to camp like a girl if you don't own an RV. So this is a great way to just jump in without having to make a big investment. Plus, you can tent camp.
Yes, that's amazing. I would never even would have thought that somebody would just deliver the RV to the site. That takes away the whole towing and everything.
Oh, yeah. So, check out outdoorsy.com, and then they'll deliver a camper it's a peer-to-peer. So you're renting it from somebody. So you're helping them and they're helping you, and it's all good.
Awesome.
Wow. All right.
There's a whole world I never knew about out there.
I know.
I love it.
If there's one of the three of us that I predict will become a girl camper, it is Julie. So probably in a couple of years, we'll be hearing about her adventures.
You'll join our subculture, Julie.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you, Janine. And I hope we get to talk to you soon.
Thank you so much, ladies. Have a great day.
All right.
Thanks.
You too.
Bye.
Okay.
Thanks, Janine.
Bye.
We're so happy you joined us today. You can find the show notes for this episode at midlifematterspodcast.com. Also, please tell a friend about the show and help them hit the free subscribe button on their favorite podcast app. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Midlife Matters Podcast. That's where we post pictures and stories about all the things we talk about in each episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.